All right, so one of the most important things of being a Christian is having a mentor for your life and always finding somebody that you can grow as a Christian with. Always finding somebody that you can grow in your walk with God. Someone who is further along in their walk so they can impart wisdom and impart knowledge into you, and for God to use that person for your life. So I'm sitting here with my pastor, Fidelis Nyembo. He's the pastor of our church, the Potter's House in Sinking Spring, Pennsylvania. And I mean, just our whole relationship just began by you outreaching to me and you inviting me out to church. And I'm just very thankful to have you in my life, man. Very thankful to have you in my life.
My pleasure, Mark. It's been a blessing, and that's why we do what we do for, and to see what God has done in your life up to this point, and to just think of what God is going to do, and that's what keeps me excited.
Yeah. So, where are you from originally, and how did you go from? Cause you weren't born like this, right?
No, I don't think I was born like this. Now, I was born in the Congo, which is Central Africa. If you look at the map of Africa, you look right at the center of it. That's where I was born, and that's where I lived for the first 13 and a half to 14 years of my life there. So
14 years old.
Yeah, so I was about, I believe I was actually now I was 13 when I moved to the US. So now I was 14, just about to turn 14.
Okay.
So 13 and a half when I came to the US.
And how was that? Like how is the Congo? Like how is that?
It's totally different. It's hard to explain to someone that's only lived here. It's hard to imagine, but it's, totally different world. Obviously is deemed to be third world.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of infrastructure, in terms of just opportunity, it doesn't come anywhere close to comparing to what America is. And so that's why the rest of us people come from all over to come to America for the opportunity.
So is that why you wanted to come to the US, just for better opportunity?
Yeah. And for most people, for most of us, that's why we come to the US. You want a chance to succeed. For most people don't realize when you live here, you're born here, like there's a difference. In the US, you can be born in poverty, you can come from poverty, but there is opportunities. Like if you put your mind to it, if you put your heart to it, there is opportunity. And so coming from a place like the Congo is like, yeah, there could be opportunities, but they are very limited. And, you have a ton of young people there. They have degrees. They've gone to school, very intelligent, have a lot of potential, but there is not much there for them. So yeah, for most of us, the reason we come, for myself specifically, we come for opportunity.
Yeah.
And,
so when did you get a hold of God? Like when did you, I wouldn't say like gave your life to God, but like at the same time, God revealing himself to you? When did that occur? Did that occur in the Congo or did that occur over here in the US?
Well, I got saved here. I gave my life to Christ here. I was born in a Catholic family. Obviously the Congo and most African and third world nation, very religious.
Is a Catholic religion a lot, like prominent over there in the Congo?
Yes. So the Congo was colonized by the Belgians. So prior to 1960, it used to be called the Belgium Congo. And so the Belgium brought Catholicism in the Congo. So Catholicism has been and is the powerful religion there. So
had a big influence on the
very big influence area. And not just not just religious, but because the government is so lacking the Catholic Church has stepped up. And it's like, whether it comes to schools, even hospitals, most of the government hospitals are now well taken care of. They're not good hospitals. So the Catholic Church, is because it's such an institution, has established itself even when it comes to hospitals, some of the best schools and stuff like that. So a lot of people, it's almost like second nature to them, Catholicism. So, although obviously there's also, evangelical churches and Protestant churches there, but the Catholic Church has just been there for so long that it's rooted there. So, yeah, I was born in a Catholic family, religious, but never had a relationship with God. So grew up, we went to church on Christmas, Easter, maybe somewhere in between, but like,
Sounds typical, like for Catholic churches.
Yeah, to do. Typical. But I didn't have a relationship with God. So when I came to the state, I didn't know exactly, but God had a plan. I came and I was living in Upper Darby, which is outside of Philadelphia, and just so happened because when I moved, I was living with an uncle of mine that was living here.
Before you go there, just real quick.
Sure.
So God already knew that he wanted to use you for your life. And God already knew that he was leading you to the U.S. and he was going to lead you to, where'd you stay at? You said Upper Darby area. Was there any like hardship or interference in that transition from going to the Congo to over here in the U.S.?
Oh, yeah, of course. Big time. I mean, just coming here itself, right? You could say it was a miracle, I won't necessarily go into all the details of what it took. But I mean, just being able to get a visa, almost everybody in the Congo would love to come to America. Mm-hmm. That's how coveted it is. And so just for any one of us, for me to be able to just have that opportunity and then being able to actually go through the paperwork and all that is required, then to come over, absolute miracle, you can say. So, yeah, so I would, in retrospect, looking back at the way things transpired and all the things that happened along the way, now I can look back and say, yeah, that was definitely not, it wasn't happenstance, Mm-hmm. I can look back, obviously I had no clue that this was God, but then looking back in retrospect, I can look back and say, oh, that was definitely God orchestrating it.
Like that's amazing. Like that's amazing, man.
Absolutely is. It's
like I wouldn't have never known you. Like I would have never been talking to you right now. Like if you would have stayed over there. Like that's just a mind blowing.
Yeah, and that's part, like, that's one of the realities of life as a Christian. You realize that there is divine orchestration, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that God makes us do anything that we don't want to, because we obviously have, God has given us free will, but there's also God is working, and like there is so much that God does that's beyond us that we could never pre-plan.
Yeah,
but he does, and so he sees, like the Bible says, he sees the end from the beginning. Mm-hmm.
So you came to Upper Darby, Pennsylvania, and then you started staying with your uncle, you said?
Yeah. So I was living with an uncle of mine, and it just so happened that we were living like a stone throw away from the church that I got saved in. Mm-hmm. When I first arrived, my uncle over here was referred to the church by an uncle of mine back home in the Congo. But they were not attending church. I had some cousins here, so they will visit every now and again. Mm-hmm. But they were not really committed. So when I initially came, I visited as well. I wasn't saved yet, so I visited as well. But over the course of time, I can't really explain why, but I kept going back. I can say why now. It was God drawing me.
Yeah.
But I didn't see it as such back then. So I kept going back, and I gave my life to Christ a little bit after that. But obviously that was all brand new to me.
And how old were you?
I was 14. I believe I was 14 at that time.
Also,
Or just
like shortly after you came here.
yeah. So shortly after I came, I gave my life to Christ, but I really never committed myself, at least fully. I kept going back.
That's young. I mean, like,
Yeah,
that's so young.
very young. And so I didn't, I think part of why I just didn't fully grasp everything, part of it was just youth, and part of it was all brand new to me.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of being a Christian, the idea of even what it meant to be a Christian, it was all brand new to me. Obviously coming from a religious family, I don't think I know I never read my Bible before. So
Oh, wow.
anything that I knew was just something that I heard. And so this was all brand new to me. But over the course of a year, I kept going back, and eventually God just really, I got the revelation. God really just got a hold of my heart. And I made it a sincere decision to just really commit myself to Christ. And,
Did you struggle with any worldly pleasures or any sin?
of course, I was young. I'm in high school. And so you go to school. Most, if all of the kids there are not Christian,
Mm-hmm.
which was, I think, in a way, it was good for me, because as I was getting into my faith, it made me make a decision. It made me choose a side, so to speak. So as I was because it wasn't just something that I was being made to do. So I had a choice to make. Okay, if I truly believe this, then I'm going to live it out.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't.
I like that you said that, because that's something it goes over people's heads sometimes. Like, we weren't born to be like wanting to look after God's heart. We weren't born to we're rebellious people. And so, like, when we're living for Christ, like, we need to make a choice to change, to follow his teachings.
Yeah, and so and a lot of times it's like we all have to come to crossroads. Because a lot of times what the struggle with many people when it comes to Christ is 1 foot in, 1 foot out,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so it's
Flirting
like,
with the world.
yeah. So for me, it was almost like I couldn't do that. I was in a place where I had to make a decision one way or another. Just being in high school, obviously the peer pressure, not just the peer pressure, but just the draw and the pull of the flesh. As a young man, don't have it all together, don't understand it all. So I had to make a decision. What am I going to do? What am I going to serve God or not? And I can't even necessarily say how, but by the grace of God, I was able to make that choice. And so I made that choice and that decision. But what really helped me is, although I did not understand everything, I just planted myself in the church. I planted myself around, obviously, believers, people that, because, I would spend most of my day out of church.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the pull of the world, there's the pull of sin. And so I needed something that would counter that.
And you comprehended that at a young age?
I can't say I fully understood all of that. Obviously now I'm speaking, hindsight is 2020.
Yeah.
But it was, in a way I did. In a way I knew, okay, this is what I want. I want to follow Christ.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll even say almost naturally, okay, I want to follow Christ. So I'm going to give myself to this. And so, but there is the wrestling, right? I want to follow Christ, but then I will have to live with the reality that every time I'm in school, every time I'm at home,
mm-hmm.
there is a pull not to. So, and so that forced me in a way to have to develop some strong convictions, so that when I'm out of the church, I have to live out those convictions.
What made you want to follow Christ? Like, was it just the gospel that you heard, or the fact that like you came to America and it's like, whoa, like that's a miracle, like how that all happened, and like kind of you saw God through that. Like, what made you like fall in love? It's like, I want to make this choice. Like, what convicted you to make that decision?
Now, coming to America didn't, I don't think was the catalyst to that. I think I just got saved. I gave my life to Christ. And so I want, I caught the revelation, you know, it's like, obviously it's hard to explain it.
Did somebody tell you about God?
Of course, that's,
Like
you know,
lead you into getting saved, or were you just
yeah,
reading the
going to
Bible?
church, I heard the gospel. So going to church, I heard the gospel in a way that I never heard it before. So I heard it. I heard that I was a sinner, needed to get saved. One, I was able to see myself as such, a sinner in need of Christ. Because the truth is, even when I saved for the year I was wrestling, I was empty. You know, I was lost. You know, as a young man, I was trying the world in whatever capacities that I had to. I was trying the pleasures of the world.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember truly being empty. I remember just feeling broken inside, like just feeling down, just feeling like I was lacking something. But what happened, to your question, when I came to Christ, I felt the joy that I never felt before. I felt the peace that I never felt before. So that's what brought the revelation, because this was real to me, right? It wasn't just something that I was being told, but I had,
like, you had a real encounter.
I had a real encounter. I had a true conversion. I was truly saved. And so obviously that was the first step.
Yeah.
I truly got saved, and then I had to work out my salvation, right? So now, I had that experience with God, but then I had to really grow in my salvation. You know, I had to make some decisions on, morality. How do I live my life? I had to now become a Christian. I got converted. That was the beginning. I caught a revelation. So I knew I wanted God. But then the practical part of it, just like serving God and making the tough choices and the tough decisions that follow suit.
So now you're a pastor now.
Yeah.
How did you go from getting saved, being a new convert, going to church, to stepping into ministry?
Yeah. Again, it all goes back to my decision of planting myself in the church. I never necessarily pursued ministry, so to speak. I just wanted to serve God. When I got saved, I wanted to serve God. Whatever capacity that would be, I wanted to serve God. And so I just gave myself to it. Whatever I could do, whatever capacity God could use in my life, it was a joy. It's always been a joy for me to be able to do that. So
In serving God?
Just don't care. Give me a broom, I'll sweep, right? You need somebody to clean the bathrooms, I'll clean the bathrooms. You need somebody to do that. I wanted to serve God, whatever capacity.
Did you always have a heart like that? Being a servant, like serving, and just, you had, like, it just sounds like you had a heart like for God. Obviously you're saved. Obviously God is working with you, but like growing up, like, did your parents like help you and cultivate you to be, like a good, respectful, coachable boy growing up?
Well, I think
That you had those attributes that you just put into serving God as well?
Yes, in a way, just culturally speaking, just where I grew up, not necessarily serving, but you're taught some principles, you're taught some basic things that are good, that are just good. You're taught respect and things of that sort. But I wouldn't necessarily equate that to what caused me to serve God. To me, that was something different. It was new to me, right? It was the revelation of who God is, the joy of what he had done in my life, and that was what birthed in me the passion to serve God. I wanted like just evangelism and things of that. So I wanted other people to come to Christ.
So that's when that became evident in your life, like that fruit. Like that's when that servanthood characteristics and attributes was born in you when you gave your life to Christ.
I mean, I'm perhaps by nature I may have a little bit of that, but I think in the sense of serving God, that came about because I caught a revelation of who God is, and also discipleship obviously plays a major role.
So you can't fake that.
No, you can't. You can fake it for a while, but if you don't have it, you don't have it, right? So
you literally clean the bathrooms of the church?
Oh, of course, I've done everything. To me, that's no less. To me, being one, anything that I get to do for God I've always counted it a privilege, right? That God would allow me to be a part of anything that He's doing, in whatever level that may be. Like whatever that is, whatever it takes to build the kingdom of God. I've always counted a privilege, and so my attitude has always been, what can I help? What can I do to help the kingdom? What can I do to further the kingdom? Because once I got into church, that was my church, right? I wanted to see God move in that church. I wanted to see God build the church. I wanted to see other people come to Christ. And so there was no question, like, I would serve whatever I can, and whatever level of service was a privilege to me.
So it started out cleaning the bathroom, sweeping the church. Did it elevate?
I don't necessarily see it as elevate, but it's just
you don't see it as elevate because it's just doing work for God.
Exactly.
It's good enough.
Yeah. So,
but a better question would be, did it become more demanding later on as you kept serving God?
Yeah. Over the course of years, I've served in different capacities, right? In the church, whatever. And I've been in drama team. I've been
How was the drama team?
Fun. It was a lot of fun.
You like that? Like, what would you do?
Because we would do like concert scenes in the Darby Church, and so we'll have like music and we have drama, and so I was part of the drama team.
And you would dress up,
act and all of that, and which was a lot of fun. And
that's cool.
Those are some of the fondest memories that I have of my early Christian.
That would be for me too.
Life, it would be that. Was involved in puppet ministry, children church, been involved in, haunted houses and outreaches and all of those. And
whoever knew church could be so fun.
Exactly,
church
right?
Could be so fun.
Exactly.
Ministry.
So yeah, I mean, it's just, it's not like I've ever graduated from one level to another. So it's always been wherever God can use me. I'm here. Wherever there's a need, because a lot of times the sad reality is sometimes people only see ministry as something that is prestigious. Not really. To me, real ministry, the ministry that I personally love is a ministry that nobody gets to see you do. The things that you get to see to keep the kingdom of God moving forward. And because to me, the ministry that most people don't see you do, God sees.
Yeah.
And so I would say some of the fondest, memories, some of the joyous ministries that I've had. I'm not necessarily public ministry, although every ministry that I have, I enjoy, but just serving, whatever capacity, not because you're looking for the praises of man, but because I'm doing this for God. And so,
yeah.
And so it's always a joyous thing for me.
I wanted to touch on when you said that the greatest ministry is the ministry where like people are not seeing. It's only just between you and God. We live in an age of social media.
Yeah.
So is that frowned upon when people are like, hey, record me so I can public speak, and they post it on social media? Can that be a ministry in itself, showing other people and other believers like, hey, like, you know, this is what boldness could look like, you know, and help encourage other people? Or is that at all costs like something frowned upon?
No, if I say the greatest, I don't think there's a greater ministry than one ministry is greater than another, right? I think, to me, the reason why I enjoy those ministries is just because it keeps you grounded, right? The ministry that nobody else sees, it keeps you grounded because it's easy. We are all, as human beings, it's easy for us to do the right thing for the wrong reasons, right? I may be doing the right thing, but just doing it for the wrong reason. And sometimes it's not necessarily that we're even intentional about it. It's just human nature.
Give me an example.
Just like going back to the idea of ministry, right? Some people, they may be doing ministry, public ministry, but it's because of the praise that they gave. You know, I'm doing something that everybody sees and everybody clap.
Yeah.
Makes me feel good. Yeah, I'm serving God, but it's like, I do that, but what if nobody was there to clap, right? Can I still serve if nobody ever sees it, right? Can I still, just like Paul would say, can I still do it as unto the Lord if nobody else saw it?
Yeah.
Or do I give my best only when people, because sadly, I see that a lot. You know, it's like, see people that they do ministry because of what they get out of it, not because of, I'm just doing this for God.
Yeah.
And so again,
it's about your heart.
Yeah. And so, but the heart can be deceitful, right? That's the caution that the Bible gives us. Like, you got to guard your heart. That's why I say sometimes you can do the right things for the wrong reason, and some people start with the right motives, with the right reason, but then, you know,
it strays off.
You stray off. So we are in the age of social media. Doesn't necessarily mean that everything that you do that is sin is not good, because obviously I preach, you know, I have plenty of public ministry.
Yeah.
Even especially with that, you constantly have to check your heart, right? Am I still doing this because I love God?
Okay, we're gonna get into that later.
Yeah.
I want to know how you started walking along the path of being a pastor.
Discipleship. If discipleship is the one word that surmises all of that.
So you're in church, you're committed to church, you're serving God, and you're doing whatever you can to do to serve God. And you find yourself being discipled.
Yep.
By who?
My pastor. Right. So what I did is I committed myself to the church, and I put myself under my pastor. And so again, when I came to Christ, all of this was new to me. Right? So I had to learn it all, and I had to be taught. Right. That's why I got myself involved in church, because I needed to learn. Right. And so that's what discipleship is all about. It's one man putting into another. Right. So it's one man teaching you, imparting, and it's not just something it's not just a bunch of knowledge. It's an impartation. Right? Discipleship is an impartation. That's why
impartation of spirit.
Impartation of spirit. Wow. Impartation of who you are. This is why, beginning with Jesus, he was with his disciples, right? He spent time with them. It wasn't just something that you do once a week. No, it was life on life, right? Like, literally, they saw him in various forms. They were with him on outreach, right? They were with him on Bible study, right?
Yeah. They
went with him to the temple. So they
got to saw different aspects of this person.
Exactly. They got to see him on the day-to-day they were close to him. And so not only was he teaching, but he was also imparting a spirit into them. Right. So there is
That's amazing.
That is amazing.
So
right?
they're getting to see Jesus, see like how he handled conflict, how he handled the pressures of ministry,
Yep.
how he interacted with people with different needs. Like
Exactly.
they got to see all of that stuff.
Yep.
And at the same time, they're able to like receive his very own spirit. Like what does that really look like? How do you, I mean, Jesus, he didn't give up his spirit at that time yet. So how was he imparting his spirit? Is that like metaphorically you're saying his, just how he moves and his ways?
Yeah. So I'm not speaking of the Holy Spirit. I'm speaking of an impartation of the man's spirit. So we are physical being, but we are really spiritual beings, right? There is, to every person, you could say there is personality, there is who the person is, a character of who the person is, but there is something that is beyond just personality. It's who you are as a person. Right? There is something deeper to who you are.
Like your soul.
Your soul. And so, but not necessarily what I'm referring to. So I can tell you what to do, but there is something deeper when you catch the why. Right? And so this is why there is a saying that discipleship is not taught, but it's caught. Right? It's not just me imparting knowledge into you, but it's you actually catching the spirit of what I'm teaching. So Jesus, what he taught the disciples, love one another, but they saw him do it. Right? So they caught Jesus' spirit on what it means to be a Christian, what it means to be a disciple or follower of Christ. So they caught his spirit. Because like the Bible says, the letter without the spirit is dead.
The letter?
The letter, right? The law, the laws of God, the letter without the spirit is dead. So
that's true, yeah. So
just a bunch of words. But when you really catch the spirit of the why, this is why a lot of people struggle even to serve God. Because to a lot of people is do's and don'ts. No, you got to catch the spirit of the why. You got to catch the spirit of, why is God asking me to do this? Or why is God asking me not to do this? So when you catch the spirit, you get it.
What a good, like, because Jesus set this foundation. What a like magnificent, incredible, like relationship dynamic that he started. He found it for us. It's very foreign in this age now that we live in. What is when somebody is discipling somebody else, what is that role that they have to play? Like when you submitted yourself under your pastor, were there certain questions you didn't ask him? Did you listen to everything he said? Like what role did you play? Like what does that role look like when you are a disciple and you're under the wing of somebody who's discipling you?
So it's two-dimensional, obviously, because you have a disciple and you have a discipler. So it has to work in tandem. I have the one is imparting, the other must be receiving, right? So it was pretty much as a disciple, the biblical word and the biblical idea is a teacher, right? That is teaching a pupil. So it's literally, I'm here. Whatever I need to learn, I want to learn. That's the spirit that he has to start with. I'm available.
Like being coachable.
Being willing to be taught. And so that varies. That he runs the gamut, right? One day could be just teaching. Another day could be discipline. Oh, you messed up here. You got to do this right. And so you got to have the spirit to receive that, right? You got to be willing, because it's one thing to receive when everything is good.
Yeah.
Do you receive discipline, right? No, you messed up there. How do you receive that? Okay. Okay. Now, if I'm truly under that man, I know one, he has my best interest at heart.
So you trust him.
I trust it. So when I'm disciplined, I receive it just as everything else. I may have to work things out in my heart and keep my heart right with God. That's my part, right? He's doing his part. Whatever he needs to do, because he knows he can see what I lack, right? So everything that he's doing is to try to help me become the man that God is calling me to be. So there are areas that I may lack, there are areas that I may need to be strengthened. Mm-hmm. So I commit myself to that. And so I have to be willing to receive what is imparting into my life. It's the story of Elijah and Elisha, right? And so if you see me when I'm taken, you receive the double portion. So you have to be committed. You have to stay connected. You have to stay linked to me. It is a spiritual. It's a spiritual thing.
Is that still true?
Of course.
Like if you are under somebody's wing and they leave, you receive a double portion.
Well,
that part, is that true?
Could be. I think every disciple's heart should be to want that. But again, if we're to take it from Elisha and Elijah, Elisha desired that, right? So I think that's where it has to start.
You have to want that.
You have to want that. You have to desire that. Obviously, God's destiny and God's purpose for every person is different. But I believe if we desire, just like Jesus said, the things that I do, you will do even more, right? And so it's the idea, the disciple, the biblical idea is almost as if what God is saying is, when you're a disciple, you get something, the idea of the double portion, like you can do more, right, than what I do. And every disciple maker, that's the passion. I want everybody that I disciple to do way more than I ever do. I want to see God do way more in their lives than they did in me. And that I can see that's the spirit of my pastors. It's always been like, I know, then the reason why I can trust them, because I know they want to see me do all that God is calling me to. And so
would that had led you to, he's discipling you and he's giving you that energy, and he's like giving you that, that mindset, like, hey, you're trusting me. I'm imparting my spirit into you. I want to make you to be all that God has created you to be. How did pastoralship unveil itself, like that position come to you? How did that work out?
I think it grew naturally for me. For me, it was a process that just evolved. Again, even becoming a pastor, for me, it was more of, there was a need, and God called me to meet the need.
So this was not something like, hey, I want to serve God in this specific way. Like, I want to do this ministry. I want to pastor. I want to be behind a pulpit. You're just giving yourself to the church, giving yourself to the ministry. There was a need for it, and then you just.
I felt yes and no. I felt that God had called me to that, right? So I felt like earlier in my Christian walk, I felt like that's what God was calling me to do. So I prepared my life for it. And I live my life as believing that that's my calling.
When God called you to do that, what did that feel like, if you're even allowed to speak about that intimate moment with God?
It's different for everybody. For me, I don't necessarily think there's been instances where God has impressed it on my heart. For me, I don't think there's necessarily like one big moment where the sky opened and I heard a voice. I don't necessarily think that.
The movies always show.
Yeah. Which some people, they have that one place where it's like, yeah, clearly God was calling me.
Just pressing it on your heart.
Yeah. So to me, it was more something that there's been times when God has just made it clear, right? What he was calling me to, and I could see the hand of God on my life working that. And so, and what I did is just, it's almost like just like the story of Moses. Um, God is tagging and tagging, and I turned, and then God began to reveal a little bit more and more.
Mm.
And so, and when that was the case to me, I was, yes, Lord. Right. So,
And then he opened up a need in the church as well, as long as, in addition to that, like that impression on your heart, there was a need that opened up. And then, so how did that two match up again?
so obviously over the course of years, from the time when God began to deal with me for ministry, I was preparing my life, and again, just in service, observing my pastor, working close to my pastor. I'm learning discipleship. Again, I'm being disciple. I'm learning. And, I wasn't necessarily looking to go out to pastor, but the need opened. And my pastor just asked me, is that something that you like to do?
Wow.
Right. And so again, it goes back, it all works in discipleship. Because I believe that God speaks to the men of God, and I trust him enough. If he trusts me with such a responsibility, he obviously knows that, okay, this is a time, right? Mm-hmm. And so
you don't need to go to Bible school or like take certain classes or get a license. Or
biblically speaking, we as a fellowship, we don't do that because we follow the biblical pattern, right? What did Jesus do? Jesus called 12 men, discipled them, imparted into their lives, taught them, and then he sent them out. Mm-hmm. Go and preach.
They didn't have education back then.
What's that?
They didn't have colleges.
Of course they did. Of course they did. Paul was actually a very educated man.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because Jesus specifically chose laymen. He chose men that were not necessarily the educated people. Mm-hmm. Right? They were fishermen. They were obviously from various backgrounds, tax collectors. But he didn't call Pharisees who studied the laws. Yeah. Right? He didn't call the scribes who knew the laws. And so, because technically speaking, those would be the people that were qualified, right, for the ministry. But that's not what he did. He just called regular everyday men, and he discipled them. He taught them, right? And they learned, they grew, and so he sent them out.
Where do you think that you have to go to college, you have to get a degree, a pastoral degree to be a pastor? Like, where did that originate from? Like, where did that come from?
Obviously, as the church evolved, that became part of it. As the church evolved, obviously the church shifted, and the epicenter of the church shifted more to Rome. And technically speaking, acquiring knowledge is not wrong, right? Because I had to learn. I had to acquire knowledge. I had to learn doctrine. Yes, in part, being discipled is what's going on, but I also had to want it enough for myself to read books. I wanted to do research, to study for myself. And so, the way it's developed, I think it's actually counterintuitive, because when you look at Bible school, mm-hmm, it removes you away from what you need to be, removes you away from the mother church. And so, and not everybody that goes to Bible school is of a pure heart. Not everyone that teaches in Bible school is of a pure heart. So the biblical pattern is discipleship. But again, you cannot dismiss the importance of knowledge and learning. That is important, but I believe the biblical pattern is in the atmosphere of the church.
Just as the Bible describes it to be.
Correct.
And so did he did your pastor give you a church and like and just sent you out to the church so
So
you became a pastor?
we came and took over the church here in Reading. That's where we came. Those in need here. So he asked us to come and take over the church here. I'm sure eventually would have probably sent us out to start a new church, to pioneer a church. But in the process, as before that became, there was a need, and so he asked us to come and fill the need there. So
Wow. Well, if you're still listening to this right now, I want you to go ahead and, if you're on YouTube, subscribe. If you're listening to the podcast version on a podcast platform like Spotify, go ahead and like that and subscribe, because we're having a great conversation. I'm hoping that you're getting a lot out of it, a lot of information, from Pastor's life and his wisdom that he's talking about. So go ahead and click that like button, click that subscribe as well. So that's how you became a pastor.
yes,
That's awesome. Now, what is the greatest lesson about, you know, this type of ministry?
greatest lesson. I don't know if I can pull one off the top of my head, but there's been many lessons. You learn to work with people. You learn to grow yourself as a man. You're constantly learning. I haven't stopped learning. Still learning, and hopefully I keep learning. But you learn to trust God. If there's, I guess, perhaps the greatest lesson, you learn to trust God. And you learn to leave people and things with God, because ultimately, it's His church.
You're
Right?
dealing with people.
Yeah, you're dealing with people, but this is His church. It's not my church. It's God's church. That's His body. So you learn to trust Him with that. And, one is humbling and it's almost threatening, because you're being entrusted with something so precious. There's souls in the lives of people. It's not an easy thing. It's not something to be scoffed at. So, yeah.
Yeah. When it comes to relationships, you're talking to a lot of different people with different walks in their lives. People who are broken, people who know Christ. What did you learn about relationships? Were you good with relationships, like prior to being a pastor, even prior to being a Christian? Were you good with relationships? And do you have better relationships now with people as a pastor?
By relationships, what do you mean?
Well,
Just
tell me that. What
do you mean?
So my definition of relationship.
What specific relationship are you referring to?
Relationships with people, like just people in the church.
Yeah, so I mean,
and my definition of relationship is like your buddy. You're really close with them. Do you have a different definition of relationship?
Well, relationship, that's a pretty broad term, right? Relationship has levels. You have a relationship with your parent, relationship with your kids, you have a relationship with your wife, relationship with your brother in Christ. So there is levels and difference of relationship. Yeah, being a pastor, it is a must. You must learn to deal with people in whatever capacity. But obviously, every relationship is different, just based on personality and also based on what the relationship is. Mm-hmm. You have a different relationship with your parent as with your brother or with your sister or with your kids. And so they're different, but they're necessary and they're unique in their own ways. But they're all necessary relationships. And so as human beings, God created us to be able to function in that, to be able to adapt to that. You don't talk the same way to your buddy as you talk to your parent, right? You're the same person, but the relationship is different. And so you address and you have a different relationship at a different level.
It's different with different people, different levels too.
Of course.
A relationship.
And, and when you're dealing with uh, people that come from different backgrounds, you have to be sensible to that. You have to be sensitive to that. You're dealing with people that have different backgrounds, that have had different experiences. And so this is just as a leader in life, you have to be sensitive to who the person is. And so every relationship, I think, has to be unique on an individual basis. I can't treat everybody the same across the board. I treat everybody equal, right? Respect everybody. Those are basic things. Mm-hmm. But my relationship with different people is different, just because some people need different things, right?
So is your view on relationships like this because you are a pastor and you are dealing with different people, or is it like that?
I think it's evolved more and grown more to be like that, right? So, I don't necessarily think I always had that idea, but I think all of us innately, we know that, right? Innately, we understand the difference of relationship because, it's just growing up as a kid. Mm-hmm. You didn't treat everybody the same, right? You were attached maybe more to your mom, but then you still had a relationship with your dad that may have been different. Your friend on the courtyard, your relationship with them was different. And so I think we innately know that, but then there is a different degree of that as well. That that if you're going to be effective as a leader, you have to grow into it, right? You have to become more sensitive to people that you deal with. Mm. You can't be oblivious when you're dealing with people. You have to become more sensitive of where people are, what people are dealing with, their personality, because you have, I don't want to say cater, but I think for want of a better term, you sort of have to cater to, because different people have different needs. And so, at least for me as a leader, I want to maximize how I help people, right? So I kind of have to meet people where they are.
So that's what you mean by cater, like coming down to their level?
Not even coming down, it's just meeting people where they are, right? Some people may need to be pushed a little bit harder, but some people you can't push them too much, okay, because they're not quite there. Some mm-hmm. people you need to get them running, but some people you just get them to start crawling, right? So being able to distinguish between who's where, who needs what, because a good thing at the wrong time could be just as detrimental.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to know who needs what, and so part of working with people, it pushes you to have to learn that.
So is this only like the things that you said about relationships and like meeting people where they are and like pushing them, like that sounds like we should all do that to some degree. Is being a pastor, is that like that degree higher for that individual to do that? Because the truth is we live in a society where we're okay being alone. Like we're okay not having friends.
We're not. We're hurting.
I remember you said that you believe, like, that we are all innately social, relatable beings, and that's what we want.
We need,
right? So help me understand how we truly need that, but we're disconnected more than ever.
Yeah. In the beginning, you go back to Genesis, God creates Adam and he says what? It's not good that man should be alone, right? It's not good that for men to be alone. There is something innately in us that we need others, right? And then you read through scriptures, you see that the Bible emphasizes relationship. We need it. But to your question,
So that's proof that we need it.
Of course, of course. You know, one of the worst form of punishment anyone can get is solitary confinement, right? Drives you crazy. Why? Because you were not built for that. You were not meant to be socially recluse. So you need that.
So that's a hard, straight fact.
Yeah.
Like, we need relationship.
We need it. Way more than we realize we do. So, you know, and to your question, why then is our society so antisocial?
We're so connected, but we're so most disconnected at the same time.
Correct. And that has become the case just because of obviously technology. Also the breakdown of the family. Most people now grow up in a broken home. You grow up in a broken home, you only have mom around, and so mom has to work to put food on the table, so she's barely home.
Yeah.
What happens when the kids may go to school, but when they come back, everybody's doing their own thing. Like there is no longer that fabric, that family fabric, to where kids actually learn to communicate to somebody. And so clearly that's what our society has been pushed to, right? But that's not necessarily what is good for us, because we can see the fruit of that throughout all of our society. People are, you know, antidepressant. You look at the suicide rate amongst young people. You look at the addiction rate amongst young people. You look at just the mindset, especially young men, hopeless. They're reclusive. A lot of young men with all the potential in the world, but yet a lot of them are giving up on life. It's like, that should not be. You're healthy. You know, you have ability, you have talent, you have potential. You live in the greatest country on earth. Why would you feel like you can never become anything? Right? And so it's definitely not healthy for us, because we need relationship. For those young men, they lack most of the time the most basic relationship: a loving father and a loving mother that would encourage them, that will guide them in life. And so, because there is such a fundamental breakdown in relationship beginning with the family, then it just mushrooms.
Kind of trickles off in different areas of their life.
Of
different
course.
People too.
Yes.
Because if like you don't have a relationship with your mom and it's not right, and with your father, I mean, it just like,
and so
it's setting it up for failure with other relationships.
Yeah, so what it's done is, one, because you learn your most basic and most fundamental truths about life in the home, right? You learn how to communicate. You learn how to work with other people. You learn how to live with other people from the home. And so if that is never the case, then you grow up never learning that. So again, you have kids that may go to school, but they don't even know how to socialize with other kids, because they were never taught to socialize at home, right? And then eventually those kids will grow up and go into the workplace. Even in the workplace, it's hard for them to really build real relationships, because you just never done it. Let alone now.
That's so true.
Yeah. Let alone now to try to build a romantic relationship. People are socially awkward because they've just never been taught how to. And so, yeah. And so and that's why I believe the enemy attacks a family, because if you can destroy the home, you destroy the people. Right? If you destroy the people, you destroy the community, the society, but then that cycle repeats. And so now you have broken people that are trying to build homes, but how can you, being broken, build something that is whole?
Now you mentioned school, right? And in the workplace, there's a whole bunch of kids in daycares. What are your thoughts on daycares?
their kids in daycare, but let's be honest, that is not what that's not natural, right? Just thinking about think of it, like even a mother's supposed to be the nurturer.
Mm-hmm.
And so a mother is having, obviously now our society, it's almost like it's been built to have to, people feel like they have to do that. But the natural thing should be a mother nurturing her kids, right? To me, it's just not right.
Like the daycare is taking the mother role in a way.
I mean, just think about this. You have a mother. She just had a baby that she's carried for 9 months, and 3 months later, she's dropping this little baby at a daycare
Man,
with total stranger.
That's crazy, man.
So that she can go work. It's like, that's not natural, right? I get it. That's pretty much where our society is. People feel, but that's not natural, right? It may be, for some people, it may be necessary, but it's not natural. And so, obviously, that's
going. What if the daycare is Christian, though? They have a nice routine that's structured, a Christian, play some Christian music for the kids.
Yeah. But you cannot have a daycare worker replace mom. As good of a worker she could be, she could never replace the nurturing of a mother, right? She could never be a better mother to that child than the mother herself. And so, is it all wrong? Can the kids, well, obviously, I'm sure the kids could survive, but I think we lie to ourselves if we think that that is totally fine, right? Because there is going to be something lacking that I believe God intended for that child to have. That is going to be lacking just because they don't have that, the nurturing of a mother, of a loving mother.
What is it exactly that's going to be lacking? The relationship?
I don't know. I mean, obviously the daycare that provides the atmosphere for relationship. I think it's something deeper than that, you know.
Because schools provide that too. I mean, kids are all in one place.
Correct.
There's all the same age group. They're all sociable there.
Yeah, but I think
gives the kids a chance to be sociable and interact with different kids.
Yes, but I think before you get to that, there are things that a child needs to receive from a mother, and in the very, very early times of that child's life, that is very critical, right? The nurturing, the very basic teaching of a mother that is involving that child, because a child doesn't understand your love because you tell them I love you. Those are just words to them. Mm-hmm. But they understand the love that you show them.
They can feel that.
Yeah, right. So they can feel that. So there are things, and I don't think it's coincidence that we are where we are as a society today. I believe as people, there's been some fundamental things that have been broken, beginning so early in a child's life, that I believe they play, it's way above my pay grade, the psychology that happens. I believe, but there is something there, that I think that is missing, that child.
You still got like wisdom of that part.
Yeah, obviously, I think you're probably going to take a lot of more research to be able to really speak to be able to decipher all of that and to be able to see exactly. But I believe that there is something. Things are naturally what we are created to need, that our society more and more is, we are being denied that more and more in our society. And I don't think that comes at no cost. I think there is a cost. Obviously, some are more pronounced than others,
Now, where do you get this revelation from? Because it's so true. Like you grow up in a home and you don't have a good relationship with your mom or your dad. Like that's the fundamental. It's the fundamental way. Like you just don't have that solid relationship with your parents. I can see that just easily trickling in, especially when you're going to daycare and to school, easily trickling into different relationships. Like it's just so true. Like I just
Just
can't
imagine,
dispute that. Like where'd you
just
get that revelation from?
part of it reading, part of it just observing things. Just imagine a kid, very, the younger they are, the more attention they need, right? The more attention they need. One, a daycare can only give your kids so much personal attention. The more attention, the more they need to be taught. And teaching a kid is work.
Yeah.
Right? It requires dedication. If you want them to learn certain principles and certain values, the daycare is not always going to be able to do that for you. But then also you have to figure in a daycare, you have different kids that are coming from different homes, right? Different value at a very basic age. So you may care about your kids and you may have certain values for them, but then they're at an age where they don't really know how to distinguish. They are being influenced by so many other influences, right? You could say the same about even school.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's a reason why you start school at 5 or 6 than at 1, right? Because believe me, the first 5 years of a child's life are critical.
Yeah. It shapes them up to like how they're gonna be when they get older.
Absolutely. Like some of the most fundamental things about who a child is going to become as a person begin back then. So
is this the answer on why people struggle with relationships?
I don't think it's the answer. I believe it's a major part of the answer, right? I don't think there's, they're myriad of things, but I think the greatest piece to the puzzle is the home. Obviously, that is connected to God, because the reason why the homes are broken is because we've moved further and further away from God, right? So man has been detached from God. It makes him create the broken home, because most, it's absolutely outrageous. It's mind-boggling how many kids are born out of wedlock. So
it's a man's responsibility, especially not to have kids out of wedlock.
Yeah. So
that's called fornication. And that's why God has rules like that in place. So exactly. You don't fornicate. Sex is for marriage.
Yeah. And so because man has been detached from God, man lives according to his own rules. And so man's rules are not going to work in the long run. So it creates a broken home. And so, and that just, you can tell, I mean, the stats are there. It's amazing how, when you look at, whether it be juvenile, kids that are in juvenile detention, people that end up in prison, young girls that take teen pregnancy,
wow.
High school dropout. You look at, kids that grow up to become promiscuous, kids that are abused.
And we see this all in society now.
You see all of those in society, and it's amazing how the home dictates that. A girl that grows up without a father is more likely to drop out. Teen pregnancy is much higher among girls that grow up without a father in the home. A boy that grows up without a father is more likely to deal with anger issues, more likely to end up in prison. You look at the prison population and you look at the number of the men that are there that grew up without a father. It's the majority by far. And so clearly that is a major piece of the puzzle.
Just having this, having this awareness of the struggle and why most people don't have strong relationships, and also having the awareness that we were created for relationship. what can we do for the society? What can society do or individuals do that struggle with having relationships, to kind of fill that need in them? You know, because I feel like we're looking for relationship. That's what we need, right? We struggle with that, and we try to fill that with different things. The pleasures of this world, with sex, with drugs, with alcohol, with money, career. Um, I mean, relationship is important. What's the solution now? Because you still got daycares, we still have schools, you still have mothers that are giving birth, sending their kids to daycare, or they're just giving birth and they don't want to stay home and raise their kids. They want to just continue to work and continue to climb up the corporate ladder. So like, what can we do?
For one, this is a spiritual problem. It's not, yes, it manifests itself in the physical realm, but it's a spiritual problem, right? That's why I say it starts with man being detached from God. You can't fix spiritual problems with carnal solutions. Spiritual problems require spiritual solutions.
Yeah.
Right. So again, if you're going to fix the problem, you have to fix it at its roots, which means you have to go back, you have to fix the most fundamental relationship first. You can't fix the home until you fix the relationship with God. Right. So what is a practical application of that? If you grew up in a broken home, you're not going to go back and change that.
Mm-hmm.
But if I grew up in a broken home, I don't have to replicate that. So now it's up to me to break that curse. It's up to me to break that generational curse. And I can't do that just by trying to become better. I have to first get my relationship with God right first. And that's why I believe the answer to all of this is the preaching of the gospel, right? The preaching of the gospel, because people may scoff at that. It's like, well, we need some practical solution. No, that is a practical solution. The preaching of the gospel, because when somebody comes in contact with God, it changes who you are fundamentally, and it changes the way you live your life. And if it change the way that you live your life, it's going to change the fruit that you reproduce. Mm-hmm. And so if man can go back to God, if the family can once again go back to God, then all of these issues are going to work out.
Because that's what happened to me. I grew up in a broken home, and when I came to God, I recognized, like, man, I grew up in a broken home. I didn't grow up with a father consistently in my life. So there were some gaps, that I had to fill in, and God had to fill in with that. But even though I was with God, I still kind of struggle with the fact that relationship is something that you should have, because I always found myself, sometimes I will be more outgoing, especially with people that I'm familiar with and comfortable with. But most time I feel more comfortable in the fact that, I'd just rather stick to myself. I'd rather not talk to anybody. And you told me something about relationship one time I was talking to you before. And you told me that just having relationship is something we all need, right? But also, like, you encouraged me to push through that. You encouraged me to, like, push through that comfortableness of not talking to anybody. And so you challenged me to do that. And so I did. And I didn't understand how relationship had different degrees. But when you challenged me to do that, I actually did it. And I got to see, like, a visual of, like, my relationship with this person. It's not going to be, like, through the roof, because when you say relationship has needs, like, I think relationship, like, it's like buddy to buddy. Like, my relationship with this person, they know everything about me. I know everything about them, but that's not for everybody. It's different degrees. And when I got that revelation, like it became fun. It really, like I feel that relationship void is like filled by me challenging myself to have relationship with people, talk to them, and it's fun. Like it really is fun. Like I don't want to be by myself, man, in my own, like just on my own thoughts, not talking to anybody. Like that's not cool. Like that's not cool.
It's not. Where's the fun in that? But just going back to your initial point, like when you come.
So I have a question for you.
Oh, let me answer the question that you asked first. Yeah, when you grow up in a certain way, change is not easy. Change is hard.
Very hard.
Right? So if you grew up your entire life, this is how you've always approached relationships. Now you come to Christ, right? So that's a sanctification process.
Mm-hmm.
Now you are saved, you love God, but then something has to change in you. And so most people don't sustain change because change is hard. Change requires time. Change requires you doing things that don't come to you naturally, right? So you've always lived, for some people, it could be decades. For some people, you've lived like this for 20 years. For some people, you've lived like this for 30 years.
That's scary.
So that's ingrained in you. You've always responded like this to problems. You've always responded like this to people. That's ingrained in you. Now you're trying to reverse that. Won't necessarily happen overnight. Sometimes it would take time for that to actually take place. So you have to be committed to that. You have to give yourself to it, right? You have to be committed. Okay, this is what I want, and I'm going to give myself to this, and I'm going to commit myself to see this through. It's going to take time. It's going to take a process. You are going to be willing to, you have to be willing to put yourself in uncomfortable situations and push through those things, because that's how growth happens.
And I believe the biggest lie on just having that growth is, well, what can this person provide me with? Like having a relationship with this person, what can they give me? I'm not going to get anything. Is that really the question? Or is the better question, what can me having a relationship with them give them?
Yeah, because I think human by nature, we are selfish, right? We pursue things based on what can I get out of this. But I think as a Christian, Christ is calling us to service. It's not always about what can I get out of this, but I want to be a blessing to somebody else. Yeah. But again, when it comes to relationship, you gain, obviously a real relationship is going to be mutual, right? You give and you get. A real relationship that's going to last. Initially it may not be mutual, but if it's going to grow and last a test of time, it's going to have to become mutual. Mm-hmm. I'm around this person because I enjoy being around them, right? And they're around me because they enjoy being around me. They pour into my life. I pour into their life in different forms, right? It could be different ways. Sometimes you may be putting more into them than they put into you. So what? Right? But it's a relationship is the joy of serving other people, right? That's a fundamental teaching of Christ. It's about serving people. It's not just about what can I get out of this.
That's the Christian lifestyle.
That's the Christian lifestyle, right? That's what Christ taught us. Yeah. That's what he showed us.
Now, stepping into a new territory, relationships, as a single man, and you are a single Christian man, and you're trying to pursue a relationship with a godly woman, somebody that will be a helpmate for you. In this broken society, I would say, not having those fundamentals growing up, that can be a challenge for young men. How can young men, a single Christian young man, pursue a relationship with a godly woman? Do you flirt with them? Like, what does that look like in a Christian way to like flirt with them? Is that even appropriate? Is that even a term that that Christians should even use?
Flirt. Well, to say flirt, you know, it's not necessarily the term itself, but I think it's how our society has made it to mean. The Bible is very, the Bible, when it comes to relationship, the Bible does not shy away from that. A man and a woman's relationship. It is romantic in a way. You know, you read some of the writing by Solomon. There is a game of romance. But I think everything, is also influenced by the society, right? Our idea of romance has changed. What is deemed to be romantic, right? So even the idea of flirting has changed. In today's society is like, it's more sexualized, right? Everything is very sexualized.
And perverted.
Yeah, it's perverted. Even the sexualization is perverted sexualization. It's just, you know, it's all very base and very just carnal. So that's the issue with the term. Not necessarily that the term itself is wrong, but it's just what it's been meant to mean now by our society. What our society means it to, as interpreted to be. And so it's hard when you grow up in a society to necessarily be immune to that, right? But I believe there is a dance.
Especially when that foundation, like the mother and father, is not really solid, right? Like that, you fall into that influence of the world.
Yeah.
So like you just naturally fall into that rhythm of like perversion and stuff like that. But that's not the way to go about.
But there is a dance between a man and a woman. There is a dance between a young man and a woman. You don't treat a girl like you treat your body. You don't talk to her like you would talk to your body. There is that understanding of her being the weaker vessel, of her being different, of her, just like the way you talk to her is different.
So do you talk to her like a child, like a little girl?
No, you talk to her like a woman, right? You talk to her. Is flirtation itself wrong? You can flirt without being sexual.
But what does that look like for people who don't know what that looks like at all?
So a woman, whether she be a Christian or not, desires certain things from a man, right? There is a reason why when God wanted to compliment Adam, he did not make Steve, he made Eve. Right? He said, dude, you like in this area, so let's make you a helpmate. I'm going to make somebody that is different from you. Different needs, thinks differently. Her brain is different. Her brain responds to different things, different words. She likes flowers. I don't like flowers. Right? So there are all of those things that play a role in how you approach a woman and how you talk to her. Right? And so there are things that intrigues her. So for one, if you're going to do that, you have to study them. You have to learn them. You have to see what they respond to.
And what's the best way to study and learn them and see what they respond to? What's the best way to do that?
Reading, observing. You'll be amazed by what you learn by just watching, by just observing people, right? And so obviously asking questions
to them,
not to them, but to others, to elders, to people that have. Obviously, you don't want to ask questions to people that don't have healthy relationships. You want to ask questions to people
that have multiple girlfriends.
Yeah, you don't want that, right? So you want to ask questions.
They get women, but it's not the only one we want, right?
But that's not what you want. So asking questions, observing, see how they move, but a lot of it is innate in us. You'd be amazed by how you put a woman amongst men. It changes how men act. Just naturally. It changes how men act. Naturally.
That's true.
sometimes for good and for bad.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Right? So, but naturally it changes how men act. Why is that? Some of it is just innate. Some of it is just, our society would call it evolutionary. I don't think it's evolutionary. Some is what God put in us. That's why man is attracted to women, right? There is that opposite, right? That attract us to each other. They're different from us, but we like that, right? Not just in
God made woman out of man.
Correct. But he made her to be different from man. Purposefully. He made her from man, meaning there is a connection, took his rib, meaning there is a connection, and one could even say, meaning that man cannot be complete apart from that, right? There's just something that man lacks. Because,
is that true?
Not necessarily that,
because God,
as a person, you are complete, but I think there is a completion. Not as a person, you can be a man that's not married. You're complete as a person. But I believe there is something that she adds to your life that God say you need, right? You need. That's what the Bible also says. When a man finds a wife, he finds a good thing. So there is something beautiful. There is something good. There is something that there are things that you cannot do by yourself, that you need her to complement you. And so it's actually complementary, meaning that you need her and she needs you, meaning that you both together, you are better, right? Like, it's not like you are less of a person because you don't have her or him. No, it's just like you're a better person when you have that, because
but not less of a person.
Not less of a person. She makes you better, right? You can't build a home. You can't build a family by yourself. You can't have kids by yourself, right?
Can we ever be better as a single, can a single man ever be better without a woman?
I think you have to be specific.
Because if a single man is here, but when a woman comes along, then the man is up here. So can a man ever come up here without a woman?
Right? In specific ways. So you can't live your life without a woman. Paul didn't marry. So that allowed him to do
God's work.
God's work. He allowed him to be what he became. But Paul didn't have children. Right? So we can't all be Paul. But most of us can't be Paul. Most of us are called to be fruitful and multiply. Right? So that's one of the most basic and fundamental part of what God created us.
Yeah.
Be fruitful and multiply.
So so I can see how you put a woman in a room with a group of men changes how we behave.
Yeah, psychologically speaking, there's just something about that, right, that just changes us. And it's also interesting how much a man having a woman actually pushes a man to want to do more with his life.
So that's what you mean when you say it's just innate in us and how we talk to her or engage with the woman?
Well, what is innate in us is just the responsibility. Like, it's amazing how a man changes when he has a wife and kids. That responsibility, for the most part, pushes a man to become more responsible. Like, man will work his butt off to provide just because of that sense of responsibility.
Yeah.
Going back, no, I don't think necessarily to engage with women is innate, but I think there is a dance there that has to be cultivated, right? I think there are some things
cultivated with the man or
in the man. There's some things there in us that has to be cultivated. Again, you get around a woman, you act differently. Why? Because I believe there is something there, right? That you may not even be trying, but you just do. That's what I mean by innate. But I think you have to learn to. You have to cultivate that. How do you do that? By doing it, right? By actually engaging with them. How do they react? How
Do
do they?
what? Do what?
By actually engaging with a person, we engaging with a woman, talking with them, right?
But when you say there's something innate in men to engage in a woman, we just naturally do it.
Not to engage. There is something innate that we are attracted to women, right?
Oh,
There's
okay.
just something innate that draws us to them.
Or just attracted to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but and also it just innately we feel and we know there is a difference there.
Mm-hmm.
But whether or not we are good at engaging with them is something that has to be cultivated.
I see.
So you have to work at it, right? You have to learn what they respond to. You have to learn how to talk to them.
Because they're different than us.
Yeah.
And because we want to talk to them, we have that attraction for them. It's just a matter of just cultivating on that little difference, that gap. There's a little gap that we got to cultivate.
It's a big gap because they're intricate beings, if we can say so. Yeah, but you have to learn. Yeah, you have to learn them. You have to learn what they respond to. You have to learn, that dance. Not necessarily the way that our society puts it, because again, society has romanticized a lot of things. It's the Disney fairy tale idea.
Mm-hmm.
That's not necessarily a biblical idea, but our society has taken what is biblical and just obviously, as they always do, they've taken it way too far. But there is something there.
Yeah.
There is something there. They respond to different things. They're attracted to different things. Sometimes the things that
and this is why we should stay far away from movies, but that's a whole nother conversation.
That's a whole nother conversation, because it can, culture itself can skew our ideas. The only struggle is that the women also buy into the same culture now, right? So they have the romanticized idea,
certain expectations,
what
a man should do.
Of what a man should do. And so, but I think, again, that's why who you pursue matters.
Now, you say pursue, right? And the expectations of what a man should do. Is it the man's responsibility to pursue the woman? Because I want to point out some scripture. When a man finds a wife, he finds a good thing.
Yep. Finds.
Is that finding somebody, right? That's in Proverbs, but in Genesis, God formed the woman out of the man and brought the woman to the man. Mm-hmm. So God is bringing, right? In Ecclesiastes, it talks about a wicked woman is given to a wicked man. Is given to a wicked man, but a godly woman is given to a man who fears the Lord. So you have that giving, you have the finding. Does a man pursue the woman? Or do you just sit back and relax and allow God to do the hard part for you?
Good luck with that one. Pursue. By pursue, what do I mean? Pursue means that okay, let's bring a practical example. You're in a room where a bunch of women. You're in a place there's a bunch of women. Who's going to go to whom first?
God. I've been contending for a wife, God. Bring me the woman, God. I want her to look back at me and just come strike up a conversation. I'm not going to move until she comes and talks to me, God. You said you brought the woman to the man. I'm going to wait.
So let's see this. Because there's other scriptures in the Bible on how people meet as well. But God can bring somebody into your path. That's more likely the context of what you're referring to. God can bring somebody into your path, but what you do with that is up to you. God is not going to bring, yeah. Adam and Eve, God brought her, she was the only woman on earth, all right? So that's a whole nother story. But God is not going to,
one.
she was the only one. But God is not going to bring a woman and bring her in front of you and place her in front of you and say you're marrying her.
Well, is there only one woman? If there was only one woman in the beginning and that God brought that one
Yeah,
woman
but
to
there is
it,
not
do we
only
do we have that one for us in this world?
there's billions of women on this planet.
So there's billions of options that God will pick to put on our path.
No, but it goes to the idea of soulmate. I don't necessarily believe there is that one person in the entire world that you have to marry. But I believe that God does orchestrate things, orchestrate when it comes to relationship. I think He has to, if you want it to work well, it has to be divinely orchestrated. I think you have to start, whether it be the man or the woman, you start by praying to God for that spouse, right? Bring it before God. God, I want you to lead me to the right person that is right for me.
So when you're praying, do you do that as a prerequisite before you go and try to search for that woman, or do you already have a woman in mind? Hey, I think she's pretty. I think she's attractive. Let me start
Why pray
praying
for
about
something that you've already decided on, right? So I think
to see if God, for God to divinely orchestrate that encounter.
I think every person should pray to God before you set your eyes on any person. I think you should start by praying to God for that spouse. And let God pray for that and ask God to give you eyes to be able to see it and not miss it. But that being said, God can bring somebody in your path, but you still have, you still have to engage. I've seen people that, I guess hindsight being 2020, you say, that was a good person for you to marry. But they didn't feel like it. They didn't want them. And so at the end of the day, you and I still have a role to play, right? God can orchestrate things, but both the man, the woman still have a role to play to actually make that become.
So the man pursues the woman.
That is more of a cultural thing.
God will put the woman in your path to pursue her.
I don't necessarily think that it has to be. I think it almost, sometimes it could be either way. But I think it's more so the case just because.
So the woman could pursue the man?
To a certain extent. That's harder to do. I know it's more cultural that men pursue women. I think there is a reason why men, culturally speaking, it's been developed to where men pursues women. I think just because of the dynamic of the relationship, right? A woman wants to be courted. She wants to be pursued, right? As a man, part of the masculinity of a man is almost like a conqueror, right?
Leader.
You go, you conquer, that's something that is in our nature. Mm-hmm. God created us that way. So that dynamic is like that because of who we are naturally. So can a woman engage a man? Of course she could. I think a lot of times it does happen. Sometimes she has to engage with him before his eyes actually, oh, really? She's here. And so sometimes it's like, yeah, it's mutual in a way, but then at some point, I think, there is a part that a man actually has to push it to the other level. Because sometimes, she engages with you, she says hi, and then your world changes, right? So,
So you're in a room, right? Say you at church, and there's women at a church conference, right? There's multiple people there, right? And you see a pretty woman in there. And we're gonna get into. I got something else too for you, but you see a pretty woman in there, are you waiting for her to talk to you, strike up a
Correct with
conversation
that.
with you, or does the man go? Like, what is there? Is there a rule?
To
Because you're
me, I don't
saying it's
think
kind of mutual. It can go either way. But what's the rule of thumb?
so. To me, one, there is just something. Again, I think it's more mutual than anything. Me saying it's mutual doesn't necessarily mean that she has to approach you. Mutual, the interest has to be sometimes the interest has to be mutual, meaning that most won't approach because she doesn't look interested. Sometimes a woman, without saying it, again, that's where the dance comes in. She tells you she's interested without saying it.
And that's the part when you start you cultivate that big gap.
Yeah, right. So like body language,
Mm-hmm.
little things that they do.
So that
Right.
could be her pursuing in a way, in her own way.
That would be her almost saying that I'm open, I'm interested. So there are those things that most guys obviously don't learn, but like there are small things that they do. You know, she looks at you. Every time you look at her, she's looking at you. Maybe that's a sign. Okay,
you feel some hot beady eyes. You look.
Yeah, right. That's her way of showing you I'm interested. Mm-hmm. Right? Little things that she does. She's nice to you. She smiles at you. And obviously, you don't want to read too much into everything, but like there are social cues that men have to learn. Like you have to learn, like small things that they do to show attractiveness, to show interest, and so you have to be able to pick up on those cues. Sometimes, too many men, again, just the lack of being sociable. A lot of guys, you spend too much time by yourself. You're not around. You're not close to a mother, so you don't get to learn those things. You don't have sisters,
right,
so you don't have female cousins, so you don't learn those things that are critical. And so most times she may not be the one to approach you first, but there'll be social cues that she will show, and to where you're like, okay, I'm interested. And sometimes maybe she doesn't give you those cues, but if you make that step, then you see those cues, right? So eventually, I think it has to become mutual, just because, especially in a mature enough relationship, it shouldn't be, I'm trying to pursue you. You're playing hard to get. It's like, that's more immature, right? You want to pursue somebody that has the same level of interest as you, that, we may not become an item right away, but there's interest. Okay. I'm not trying to pursue somebody that's rude, that is putting me off,
playing hard to get.
That is playing hard to get.
Is that the characteristics of a godly woman?
Yeah, but the characteristic of a godly woman is based on her virtue, right? She may be godly, but she may be awkward with men, just because she's never had a father. She doesn't know how to relate. She doesn't have a brother. She doesn't know how to relate to men.
How do you distinguish? Because just like God is going to, like you said, put a woman in your path, the enemy can put God puts a woman in your path to encourage you, to make you be the better man, to help you in your walk with God, in your ministry, right? The devil, he wants to destroy you. So he's going to do a copycat of that woman, right? A counterfeit, and put that woman on your path too. How do you distinguish?
So
who's from God, who's from the enemy, or who's right for you, more compatible, and a helper for you?
That's why what is most important to you matters. Why are you drawn to that woman? Is it because she got a pretty face? Is it because she's fine? Is it because she's a baddie?
Yeah.
Well, good luck with that. What should be more for a godly man, as a Christian? Yeah, a pretty face, yeah, it's nice, right? she's good. Yeah, she look good. Yeah, that's nice. But what is most critical should be who she is as a person.
Okay, so there's two dimensions to that.
Oh
The
yeah,
good looks is not just it.
yeah. Of course, good looks matters. You know, if anybody tells you good look don't matter, they lie. Hey,
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, she bad. Yeah,
well, obviously,
yeah.
obviously, good looks also matter. Also, that's um, that that goes from person to person, right? So that varies. One person good looks may not be another person good looks. But I think more than that, that could be the icebreaker, but that should not be what you base your pursuit of a woman on. Who she is as a person. Most, as a Christian man, most of all, where she is with God should be what's most critical to you.
But what if she's grounded in God, but she's not? She's not. You're not attracted to her.
Yeah, then don't pursue her.
But she is grounded in God. That woman will be good for you.
Yeah, but beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I don't think you cannot dismiss physical attraction to a person. I think it's foolish to try to dismiss that.
So you got to be attracted to them at some level.
You have to. You're going to marry them. You have to be attracted to them. But you have, as a person, you have to check yourself on what is attractive to you and why, right? So why are you attracted to the person? It can't just be that she has a pretty face, but she doesn't care about God. That should, as a man, she has a terrible character. That should put you off. I don't care how pretty your face is. You look ugly to me if that's you, right? Yeah. And so, yeah, it does matter that you're attracted to a person. That goes without saying. But what you're attracted to should matter as well. But more than anything else, who she is. Yeah, your face may attract me to you, but what would keep me pursuing has to be much more than that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I may look at you and be like, that's a pretty face. Oh, but I want to know who you are as a person. Because remember, you pursue somebody for marriage, you're going to have to build life with this person. So eventually, people are going to change. Yeah, she may still be the same person. She may be a different version of the person that you fell in love with. Yeah. But you're going to have to live with this person. You're going to have to build a home with this person. You're going to have to raise kids with this person. She's going to influence your kids. Right? She's going to influence how you raise your kids. So those are absolutely critical things, right? She can make your life a living hell, right? Just like the proverb speaks about. And so, yeah, so there are things that matter way beyond just the looks. Yeah, you can start there. Oh, but you should go way deeper than that. Yeah, there are people that may be Christians, but they're not as, just because they're a Christian doesn't necessarily mean they have what they need to have, right? They can be Christians, but what are their values? Where are they in their walk with God? How is their relationship with God? What are they pursuing in life? Are they a Christian feminist? Right. So, because
that's a good question. Are they a Christian feminist?
What are they really pursuing in life? Yeah, they may call themselves Christians. What are they pursuing? Where do they stand on most fundamental faith? That's why the Bible says you should not be unequally yoked. So, yeah, that is true. A Christian should not be unequally yoked with an unbeliever. But that also could be values, could be vision, could be where you're going. Is she willing to follow you? Is she willing to let you lead? Is she willing to allow you to be the man that God created you to be and to trust you? And so all of those things matter.
And that can help the individual know, okay, this is probably from God. You know, we got the same vision, we got the same walk. I'm attracted to her. You know, she's grounded in God. She knows her purpose and stuff like that. Now,
And a lot of times you learn that with time. You give things time. You watch the person, because anybody can say anything, right? Anybody can say anything, especially if somebody really wants you. They would say anything. But you want to watch. Does their walk match their talk? Right? Do they do what they say? Do they live out what they say they believe? And so all of those things matter. And so, you know, and again, it always has to start with believing God for it. You pray for it. You believe God to make it happen. And then throughout the entire course of the whole thing, you pray and you truly be honest enough with God to say, God, I want your will, right? I want you to either make it happen, or if it's not, make it not happen. And be open to that, which is a hard thing when emotions are involved.
Yeah. And this is a great conversation for young men, like this topic on how to find a godly woman. Like, if they didn't grow up with a father who kind of taught them that, and they learned that growing up, like, this can help them out, you know, big time.
Yeah, and I think
we have so much revelation, like so much wisdom. And I wanted to ask you. Well, go ahead. I want to hear what you have.
And again, this is why discipleship is critical, because as a young man, you may think you see things, and then it's always, if you're being discipled, talk to your pastor, because they may be able to see things that you don't see. They may be able to have things from a place where you can't see. And sometimes it is spiritual. Sometimes it's just life experience.
Discipleship is key.
Yeah. It's like, nah, she's trouble. Oh, she may look good, she may sound good, but she's trouble. Stay away from her. Right? Things like that. And so
also bringing the woman up to the person that you're under the wing of.
Yeah, find wisdom from people that you trust.
And get counsel.
Good counsel, right? You want discipleship is in every area of our lives. All right, it's not just in some areas; it's every area of our lives. Find counsel. You know, for most, you know, for men that are not believers, you know, fathers important. You know, uncles sometimes. Older men that have wisdom, that have gone through life and seen some things and lived through some things that you haven't, that are able to impart in you now, that are able to see things that, for the lack of experience, you can't see, right? So there's some things that you just don't know what you don't know. But and that's why it's critical. We're not meant to just be a lone ranger all by ourselves. That's why we need those people around us in our lives.
I agree with that. Before we wrap this up, are you proud of yourself as a man and who you've become so far?
There's a lot more that I can become. There's plenty more that I can become. So, but am I content? I'm always content with what God has done in my life. I'm absolutely humbled. I know I'm blessed. You know, may not have everything that I want, may not be all that, you know, may not be at the same level, quote unquote, as other people. I'm blessed. You know, God has blessed me beyond what I could imagine. You know, so proud. I don't know if that's the term that I would use, but I'm absolutely satisfied, absolutely blessed with where I am in life as a man, what God has done. And, you know, maybe obviously still growing, still want more, still want to grow, but content with where I am.
Yeah. Well, I'm very happy, you know, to have you as my pastor. And I'm very happy that you've been obeying God and been allowing Him to use your life, um, um, and just following His calling. And just thank you for your time, cause I know you're a busy man. You got a lot to do. Thank you for your time.
I appreciate you, Mark, and appreciate all that God is doing in your life, all that God is going to do in your life. Again, like I said earlier, this is why we do what we do. To be a blessing to others, it is a privilege. It is a privilege to be able to impart in people's life, work with people, that God would even entrust us with such precious privilege. So it's always a privilege, and appreciate your time. Appreciate you trusting me to be here with you. Thank you.
Hey, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, subscribe to the channel. This is an absolute powerful conversation for Christians and just young men. We cover so much discussion, so much different topics. So go ahead, subscribe to that channel. Go hit the like button. Have any questions for Pastor Fidelis? Drop them in the comments below. If you're listening to the audible version on Spotify or a podcast platform, go ahead and like that and subscribe and share it with your community. Share it with your friends, your family, and other young men in the area as well. Thank you for listening to the Mark Stokes Jr. Show, episode 4.
Thank you, Mark.